right. Today, it's our absolute honor and pleasure to be joined by the wonderful, the extraordinary Jeff Loveness. Jeff, welcome to Friends from Work, and how are you?
Hey, fellas, good to see you. I'm doing all right. I currently very little sleep, kind of insanity, trying to get Avengers done, but doing all right.
No big deal.
Yeah.
No big deal.
How many are there again?
Yeah,
How many characters? Oh, Iron Man's dead. Oh, okay. Good.
Well, I mean, that makes it easier. Just one less thing, you know?
Yeah. It's good.
That's what today was going to be about.
One.
Today was just going to be about us telling you which characters are alive and dead, just so you know.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's actually a perfect segue into the first question I had for you here. You're somewhat unique among Marvel screenwriters. Not wholly unique, but somewhat unique in that you do have a background writing Marvel comics.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you are tasked with writing a screenplay like Quantumania or Kang Dynasty, what does that process look like in terms of comics homework? Like, does the studio give you a certain run or arc or series to read? Do they say, generally familiarize yourself with all of the major arcs where these characters play a significant role? Or is it just kind of you come to them with your own ideas and they let you run wild?
A little bit of both, but they certainly they'll send you, as much research as you want, or they'll certainly have their character dossiers or something, which is kind of funny. Right. It feels like you're reading intelligence, like you're reading the computer. Am I gonna go kill Osama bin Laden somewhere? Like they're giving you a big briefing on Modoc or something. But I think, just because I had grown up with the comics and I had written a fair amount of comics for Marvel and DC and the indie stuff, I knew, when I hear the name Modoc, I'm like, oh yeah, I know who that is. It helps to have a little bit of a shorthand, but you also need to, I guess, you got to almost separate that and be a screenwriter as well. So you're okay, how do I build Kang from the ground up? Because obviously the comic character is great, but he is also he can be one note sometimes. He loves to conquer, and he loves his little beanbag chairs that he lounges in. And so, when you get an actor like Jonathan Majors, I go, oh, man. That is my favorite thing about Kane. He's always just comfort is his objective. He's always in such a comfortable position, spreading on a subway or something. No, but then you do have to kind of at the same time realize it's not a comic book, and you have to kind of make this character brand new for someone who's just watching it.
Sure.
Right.
Making a blockbuster film like this is obviously a massive undertaking, but you've probably been sitting with these characters for a long time before you pass them off to VFX artists or actors or whatever. And so when you were actually watching the final product, was there one scene, shot, sequence, something that was just very different than you thought in your head that entire time?
Oh, that's anything you make. It is wild. Even I started making YouTube videos with my friends and stuff. Even that is oh man, I don't remember that part. Or I don't know. Does my voice sound like that? Everything. But that's almost the joy of it, because for every moment where you're oh, that's kind of weird, there's the flip side of that moment to where again, I'll just use Jonathan Majors. It's wow, he made that line so much better. I think there's there's a moment in the movie where he's talking to Janet, and it's before he's a villain, before all that stuff. It's that last kind of moment where she doesn't know who he is, and he's talking. And I think the line I had in the script was "Time isn't what you think. It's a K." But Jonathan, as the great actor that he is, he made one small change. He's you know what? It's maybe I'll just slow that down a little bit. And so he said, time, period. He holds it isn't what you think. And because he added that little pause, it made that line that's my favorite scene in the movie with him. And because he added that little pause, you can see that extra. It's Kang is deciding how much to tell her, and then he takes the risk and he tells her. That stuff to me is that's when the actor takes over, and it's a bit of a symbiosis. It's kind of cool.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's so true, because it starts to give you this sense that he really is, whether this is manipulation or honesty, opening up to Janet and sort of creating a real relationship there.
To me, I mean, at least from my perspective, it actually is like honesty. Like to me, I thought it would be really cool if like I used like examples of like Napoleon or Vladimir Lenin got sent off to like Switzerland before World War I and stuff. Like these sort of like great men of history or these important men. There is usually a moment in their life where they've lost really bad or they're in exile or like their story could be over. And there's usually someone they meet or something that happens that kind of pulls them back in. But they still have this like reprieve. Like Napoleon is on that island as an exile. His career's over, you know, like, or again, Lenin is off in Switzerland, pretty far away from like the Soviet revolt, you know, and
right.
I wanted to give Kang that moment of like, oh, clearly he just lost his empire. He's crashing down here. And for the first time in who knows how many hundreds of years, thousands, someone doesn't know who he is. Like there's this like, that old Frankenstein movie. If you've ever seen that, it's like the blind girl, the blind girl in the village who's like kind to him. It was that example.
Right.
Like, oh, what if someone did offer like water to Kang the Conqueror and like heal his wounds? He would feel almost like guilty too, but he would also see like mercy for the first time in a long time. And when he hears her talking about missing time with her daughter and all that, it's like suddenly this like time god is reminded how much time really matters to someone. And it's like in old Greek mythology, like the gods would dress up, you know, or they would test people, then they would give you something if you were kind. It's almost like him realizing like, oh, I actually can like easily make this person's life better and I will do that for them. So for me, it's like, I think that makes Kang a cooler character. If like, he's not lying. He's actually like, no, that's like, I will give that to you. Like I will, it's like a gift.
This is entirely not what I was going to ask, but now I just got to say, I freaking love that you said that. We actually got a chance to talk with friends of yours, Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing 2 weeks ago. And I love that you just basically reiterated something they've been saying. So just a compliment to you. Like that's one of the coolest parts I think about Kang as a character and how he can differ from Thanos in the obvious follow-up of Endgame here. Is like he's a human. Yeah. He's a human and he has those things as a part of him. Like he can show mercy. He is conflicted about a troubled past or traumatic past. And like, it's not just the Conqueror version all the time. And I think that's really fun. I think you handled that really well.
That's cool, man. And, oh man, their comic is great. That came out a little like after I had written kind of my take on it, but I was like you just said, I was kind of thrilled when I read it. I'm like, oh yeah, this lines up. Like, this is like, I think we have a similar take on the character. That was a great run that they did.
Well, and it's funny. That's what they said because of the time as a cage line. I think that there's almost like verbatim line in the comic, and they were saying there was no overlap, at all.
I thought that was I wrote that line like on a train. We had a small break in production, and like I had Jonathan again. I can talk about Jonathan Majors all day. Like he's such a good collaborative actor, and he cares so much in a good way. Like. And so we went back and forth on that one line of like that little, how much does Kang open up? Like how much does he say? And what does he think of time? And I was going back and forth and I couldn't quite figure out what the word was. And then cage came up and I'm like, oh, that's it. Yeah. It's a cage. Yeah. And so it was kind of wild to see it in their comic too. I think just something's in the water.
Yeah. It's funny talking about, sort of collaborating and I guess, you know, what's out in the zeitgeist. One thing that I've been curious about, you know, you and Michael Waldron both kind of coming from the Rick and Morty world, entering in with Phase 4 and Phase 5. You know, Waldron wound up between Loki and Multiverse of Madness introducing some big elements of Quantumania. You know, sometimes variants of those elements or different iterations of them. And then obviously Waldron is set to write Secret Wars and you're writing Kang Dynasty. I think that that's such a different approach than what we saw with Infinity War and Endgame, you know, which were written by the same folks, directed by the same folks. Right. And so I've been curious, have you found yourself collaborating a good bit with Michael? Do y'all talk a lot about how this stuff shows up, or is it more kind of you you work on your own things and you bring the finished products together and go from there?
I mean, it's a bit of both. No, but certainly we've been talking a lot and trying to make it cohesive and all that, and then also giving each other enough space to be like, all right, we gotta write like 5 drafts of this thing before it even makes sense. So like, but he's a great writer, and he sets like. That guy's got a good fastball. He's a great writer, and like he makes me a better writer by trying to keep up with him and stuff. So no, we've been collaborating, but then also giving each other enough space to kind of find our own movie in there as well. I think like obviously it's almost comedic how hard this challenge is. It's like, oh no, you have to follow up Endgame and Infinity War, both made about $2 billion, and everyone loves it. So. It's been nice to have a buddy that you can kind of joke about that with. It's like, oh yeah, we have to like quite literally like on paper, maybe the hardest job in the world as far as movies go. But I don't know. I'm just trying not to think about it and like write a movie that I would like, and we'll see how it goes.
Oh yeah.
I'm not worried about it, by the way. Was Cassie always going to have her own suit?
Ooh, good question. I think an earlier version we tried out was not her as a superhero, but then I just kind of felt like, well, she's just going to be the annoying kid in a movie then. Like, she's just going to be like, do you ever see like Jurassic Park 2? There's that teenage girl that like does gymnastics and kicks it, and then suddenly there's an opportunity for her to use her gymnastics, and like she like does
full
a
circle,
kick on
baby.
a raptor.
Yeah.
Like I've had that in my head. I'm like, oh boy, like maybe we should make her a more integral part of the story, because if she's not, it's like she's going to do gymnastics and kick Kane into the 1800s or something, or into his big clock machine.
Sure.
But yeah, that, I mean, in the comics, she is very much her own hero, and she's inspired by her dad, and she's kind of going on that road. So I think in one version of the script, there was more of a story with her and Hope, how like Hope isn't her mom, obviously, but kind of they're all together. She's almost like a stepmom. It's that weird thing with like an adult kid and a new mom, or a new, like what, but like I had them have more of a playful, fun mentor relationship. And like that was going to be a source of stress, where it's like Hope kind of helped her make a suit, and like, don't tell your dad, like, and it was something that Scott didn't know about, and you could see Cassie kind of becoming more like the Pims, and so I think
Interesting.
It was pretty early on. We wanted her to have a suit. We wanted her to kind of be on her own journey to kind of fit the character. But there was a bad version where she was yelling "Dad" even more.
and you get a little bit of that still, I guess, like with the dinner table scene and how
exactly
like Hank and Janet are sympathetic to her being in jail and whatnot.
I would have broken out with ants and all that. And then like Hope and Hank are clearly working with her on this, kind of quantum, device that they probably did most of the work and just kind of gave Cassie the credit, but that's clearly she's kind of ingratiating herself into that sort of superhero side of life, and her dad sees her, kind of repeating some of his mistakes.
My follow-up to that is something I want to compliment you on again, is I felt like something you handled amazingly well is making this movie about Ant-Man and the Wasp, in that Janet and Hank were the original Ant-Man and Wasp.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't want to diss somebody else, but those characters could almost be forgotten in previous iterations. And I like that you kind of put a central focus on their story as well. And so I guess my question is, was that intentional as well? Or did you kind of stumble into that as you're writing the story?
That, especially like with Michelle Pfeiffer, I'm just a big Michelle Pfeiffer fan.
She was so good in this.
Yeah. Like I think, not that we forget, but like she is like an A-list, like top of the top movies, like an actual.
I totally
like,
know what you're saying.
And like same with Michael Douglas. It's like, oh no, these are like movie stars. Like these are not actors. These are like, or I mean they are, but like these are like Hollywood movie stars. And so I thought like, even if we just give them a few good pops, like they will nail it. And Michelle Pfeiffer, especially for me, I'm like, oh man, I've seen so many father-son stories. We've seen all these surrogate, Jarrell, Kal-El stories. We've seen dad with a weird past. But I thought it was like, oh wow, why don't we give Michelle Pfeiffer the kind of unforgiven role? Why don't we give her like give it a weird mother-daughter relationship and let her have the complicated Xavier Magneto relationship with the villain. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. On like a gender level, even on an age level as well. There's like, it just felt kind of fresh to put her in that more complicated spot.
2 looks on her face. 1, when she realizes Kryler's turning her in. So good.
Yeah.
And then 2, when she touches the core the first time. Some really good acting from Michelle Pfeiffer there.
She is great.
Yeah.
And like, it was so cool to see her and Jonathan work together. It was like this moment.
Oh,
it was like,
you get the vibe
unexpected.
of like, oh, I think game recognizes game here. It's like they are making each other like they're matching each other punch for punch. I'm like, wow, like she is. Yeah, you get to see the movie star come out. You're like, wow, that's Michelle Pfeiffer. Like she's pretty good.
Totally.
Man, talking about the engine core, one kind of in the weeds question I had here. So Scott agrees to shrink and retrieve the engine core for Kang, and in return, Kang promises to release Cassie. But then once Scott holds up his end of the deal, obviously Kang goes back on his. And I was curious, what's motivating Kang there to not give Cassie back to Scott and then just kind of walk away without creating further conflict?
Right. That's a fair question. I think in my head, Kang has already paid the price. He lost, 30 years by trying to trust Janet and say, hey, like, don't do that. And she slams it down. I think he's finally, for the first time in 30 years, got that thing in sight, and he sees Scott waffling, and he sees Janet right there, and he sees Hope right there, and he's probably got 1 second before they pull something or try. And so it's like, okay, this guy's caving. And like, he's not wasting that one opportunity he has to, like, he's got his tech back. He's not friends with Scott Lang like he was with Janet. Like, it's like, all right, like, all right, screw you. Like, here we go.
Right.
Like, but that is his arrogance as a character, because he doesn't value people. And it's like, oh man, you should have done that. Like, you should have given him his daughter back. Like, because he was a little short-sighted and a little hasty and a little bit like, okay, I'm getting that and I'm getting out of here. Like, he underestimated how angry that would make a dad, you know, and how how rageful that's going to make Scott and Hope.
Man, I really like something that I thought about when you were talking with Kyle a second ago about the role that Cassie wound up having in this. I really love, whether this was intentional or just something that sort of came about because of what happened in Endgame, because Scott missed 5 years of her growth. There are these moments in the film where you can sort of see him wrestling with like, I guess I'm sure a lot of parents would say that it's hard to not treat your children as little kids even once they're older. But for Scott especially so, because the last time he saw her, she was actually a little kid. And I feel like there's like that creates some good tension in that relationship. And in moments like that, where Scott's reaction is almost like furthered by the fact that it's like, not only has he been separated from Cassie so many times, but this is still someone that he's viewing as like a little girl, like a true child.
And she literally has to grow up, by the end of the movie, like she gets big and she, he lets her do her own thing. That that was probably the major theme from day one of like, and there was more stuff, obviously stuff gets cut in a movie or you refine it as you go along, but like there was a sadness to it because like even before the snap, he was in, house arrest for a long time. He was in jail in Germany. He was in jail at, in the first movie and all that. Like he's missed probably half of her life, if not more. Like he's missed a lot. And he misses it because he does the right thing. There's almost that like, there's that Spider-Man curse to him, to where it's like, if he had just not done that thing at VistaCorp, if he had not, looked out for the little guy, or if he didn't go to Captain America, if he didn't help him out there, there's all these little things where it's like he could have looked the other way, but he didn't, and he really lost a lot of time with Cassie. But on the flip side of that, it's like that's the stuff that really made him a hero to Cassie. Like that's who she wants to emulate. Yeah. But now that he's in like the victory lap of his career, it's like, well, he's not that guy anymore. It's like, what happened to the guy that I really cared about? So it's a weird thing. Like you're always, I don't have any children, but like it does feel like you're always running out of time with them and you're always squandering the time you do have. Like, I don't know if you go home to visit your parents at all, but like my parents always give me so much gripe and like, all right, yeah, I'll go home. I live in the middle.
Right.
We live in the middle of nowhere. And so like by the time I finally get home, you know, then my dad's just watching like football all day or just watching like Frasier reruns.
Oh man, yeah.
I came all the way up here to watch Frasier. What's going on?
Yeah, mine is I will get home and my mom, who has been telling me to come home forever, will immediately go to the store and just be gone all day.
Yeah, they have nothing. Yeah, they got stuff to work out. But yeah, and there was more. You know, Katie O'Brien, who plays like Jentora, like the rebel leader. There was a little more with her and Cassie that I liked. Of like, Cassie, you know, is that scene of like she sees all these refugees and like, oh, we got to help these people. But then Jentora, because she had, there was this thing of like she knew Janet very well, and there was a whole backstory thing that got cut. But like, also, no, you're this teenage white girl coming in. Like, we're not your study abroad program, you know. Like, just because you say you want to help is not going to help us, and it's, you know, you're going to probably cause more trouble than you're worth, which she kind of does by leading like Modoc to all them. But there was Catherine's a great actor, so I think there's a lot to do with Cassie going forward.
Well, and I was thankful that you didn't fall into the typical trope of once they got into the quantum realm and realized that, okay, stakes are serious, that they weren't like then in the middle of the fight arguing about the jail time or their family thing. We were actually thankful that you kind of just like, in that fast moment, Scott had to do the, what is it? Shrink tap, jump tap. And just kind of like right away, okay, we gotta learn it now. It's like, we're faced with this reality. Thank you. Because I feel like a lot of movies would have done the thing where it's like, while they're fighting, they're like, no, that's not how you do it. Or like, you never should have done this in jail. Bam. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, and you didn't do that. I like that.
No, I did think at the end of the day, like when you actually are in a crisis, like, you know, your daughter's a good person, like, and like, all right, we'll talk about this later. Like right now, here's the fundamentals: stay alive, and she already knows how to do that stuff. It felt like, I mean, the trick of this movie, and you know, I'm sure the internet's got a lot of opinions either way, but like, I think that the trick and like the fun of this movie was how do you make it like this adventure comedy, but then also it has real stakes, but then also you need to be able to punctuate it and pop the balloon with jokes along the way. Like I'm not comparing this to Ghostbusters. This is by no means Ghostbusters, but the way Ghostbusters works on like on a formula level is like so cool. Like, oh, these actually are real stakes and these guys are like, you know, in trouble, and oh, he loves that woman, but they're joking the whole time. There's great little moments of relief. But at the same time, you know, that Gozer stuff is pretty serious and you want to take care of it.
Right.
That was, I think, kind of part of the joy of the movie, of trying to hit that sort of like 90s movie adventure with comedy and hopefully real stakes as well when Kane shows up.
You just need to know that was us though, because like that we got to the premiere. Well, we were in California and LA at the premiere, but not at the actual world premiere. But we went that early, and so you know when we walk out of it, we have no idea what anyone else is going to think. Period. So we go back and we record our initial reactions episode. If you go back and listen to that, it's 2 hours long, and it's us being like, "Oh my gosh, that was the most fun I've had in a while."
Yeah.
Like well, guys, I said the word fun probably what, Rob? 27 times. I mean, like legitimately.
That makes. Let me just say, guys, I actually saw that video because I'm a weird internet freak, and like,
oh really?
Yeah,
oh man!
Wow. At the premiere, I was like, oh yeah, what are these internet people saying? And you know, a lot of thoughts on the internet and all that. But I stumbled across yours.
Wow,
and guys, let me just be open here, just honest. Like, you know, the reviews did kind of surprise me, or like it seemed like a lot of people didn't quite get what we were going for, or you know, maybe that's on me as a writer. You know, plenty of stuff to say, but when I saw your video, it truly got me out of the dumps because I'm like, oh
my gosh,
these guys got it. Like, oh, I think like, wow, these guys got what I was going for. Of like, yes, the movie should be fun, and like a superhero movie like this, it should be a little elevated. It should be a little like. I miss comedy movies that had actual like gags and jokes.
So do I, Jeff. Like, that's what you don't realize. So do I. Like, I talk like the imagination side of it too. Like, it's unbelievable. The visuals, the costumes, all that. And And I think that making a movie in today's day and age that's just fun, like forgetting that like going to the theater and supposed to be fun is hard to do for whatever reason in our current cultural moment. Like it's not cool for us to say that. And what's weird is like that first episode was a genuine opinion. Like we didn't have anything else to like reference it off. So we woke up, just being totally honest, the next day also so surprised. Like we were like, oh my gosh, like, are we in the minority here? Like, do I have to rethink like why I had so much fun watching it? I hate that that's what I was thinking, but that's how crazy that moment was.
Yeah, it's an odd world we're in now. And like, I don't want to sound 90 years old, but like it is a little strange, like to see so much commentary and to see so much, like everyone kind of wants to be a part of it. And like, and then the harsher your opinion is, obviously the more the views you get. And like, it is weird. This kind of like, it's almost like sports radio or something. Like literally everyone is like a shock jock now. Like everyone is like.
I say that, Robbie, all the time.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, guys, I really mean it. Like, honestly, you guys are, I like that you're not like professionally angry either. Like a lot of the YouTubers or whatever. Like, no, it seems like you guys like movies and you dive into them and stuff. Like it's cool to see that passion. But I'm not even saying this. Like, I saw that video from you guys. I watched most of it. If not, it was a long.
Oh my gosh, it's long.
But
in a hotel room.
Yeah, it really like made me feel a lot better and not crazy, because I'm like, yes, okay, I think these guys, at least like these guys got the vibe of what I was going for. Of like,
wow, that's
I wrote this movie during COVID, when like movies weren't around. Like it was
it wasn't even a given that there would continue to be movies.
It was I had such pressure. This is like the first movie I've written, and I had this feeling of like, this is a big budget like superhero movie. They might not make these anymore. Like this, I'm like, wow, this like if the world, like, who knows what's going to happen? This is like May 2020. I'm like, who knows? And I'm like, you know what? Like, what kind of movie would I want to watch right now? I'm like, I would love to watch one of those, like something like Jurassic Park or like Hook or like Austin Powers. The way it just had goofy jokes, like that kind of like just a fun movie that also had moments of real acting and a real villain and stuff like that. But that it meant a lot, guys. So thank you on your end too.
Oh no, well that means a lot to us.
Yeah, you
Thank
have no idea. We spend so much of our time talking about that, like we built the entire podcast about wanting to be a positive, like shine a positive light on these things that we loved. So like we, in general, our mission statement is to not do those things you're talking about. We are not the guys that's going to like tell you all the things you missed. We're also not the guys that are going to be like, here's why this sucks and this sucks and this sucks.
Yeah.
It's going to be,
we got enough YouTubers with horrible beards to do that already.
Also, it's like,
can I see your guys' reaction thumbnail face? What's your go-to, like?
I just don't get it. If you don't like it,
Yellow
then
arrows
if you don't like it, then move on. You don't have to, like, no one's making you get up there and talk about it. Anyways, I have a couple in the weeds questions I want to ask. So you first, Robbie, and then we'll do that.
Yeah. Well, first off, I wanted to say one of the things I love so much about what you were just describing, it is, I feel like that has to be such a hard balance to strike, of having a movie that's so fun and does have like memorable gags that work, like an Austin Powers, but unlike an Austin Powers, is still rooted in characters that you take seriously.
Right. Yeah.
And not, I think the easy one is the portrayal of Kang, but I actually think, every character has little moments like that, of varying length, where they feel very, it's tangible, and there's a sense of tragedy kind of underlying a lot of this that I think is it's really unique, that the combination, and it works really well, I think, for how hard of a balance that is to strike.
Yeah, with a movie where a guy's got holes and stuff. Like there's
unbelievable.
There's mother wound trauma to talk. Yeah, that if ever there's a director's cut or a 4-hour extended version, Evangeline Lilly did some really good emotional acting, and like some stuff just didn't fit in the flow of the movie, but like she's great. Did you guys ever watch Lost? Was that before your time?
Oh yeah,
dude, Jeff.
Yeah, no, she's terrific in that, and like that was something I really wanted to hit, where I'm like, yeah, this is a movie like this is a quote like family movie, which is a bad word, but like no, it's literally a movie about a family though, which a lot of superhero movies aren't outside of like, you know, Fantastic Four or like whatever Cyclops has got going on in the X-Men comics.
Well, and that's like the running joke from She-Hulk too, right? Like so many superheroes don't even have a family. So this is a rarity in that we're going to lean into the family side.
Yeah. And so that felt like a strength where it's like, oh, and if your mom was a superhero, your dad was like, there is like a bit of a trauma or a legacy you can play into. So no, that means a lot, guys. Like that it felt outside of like Fantastic Four or something. I'm like, this feels like the only movie where you can have almost like 3 generations of a family and have the same adventure together. It felt like a really cool opportunity.
Dumb question then, and maybe we can get rid of this later, but you've said this 4 times now. I guess as someone who doesn't know, when something does get cut, why is it getting cut? You've said that like 3 or 4 times that something you liked got cut.
Oh yeah, I mean, movies are hard to make, and like there's a lot of stuff you overwrite almost intentionally, and there was a version I wrote that was probably like 180 pages, like way too long. Like,
oh gosh,
a 3-hour Ant-Man movie.
Yeah,
but no, I mean, and this is more on the editors and Peyton obviously is the director and like, you know, studio stuff, but like I think, you know. There's just stuff that maybe it feels a little tangential to the main story, or you want to keep the momentum up, especially going into the 3rd act. You know, there's plenty of that stuff in any movie, and like anything you ever make, like there's always going to be a thing you miss, but then secretly it's like, nah, they're right. Like, they're right. Yeah. Like I played, it would not have worked, but like I played a henchman who got like blown up by Modoc. And like it was in the movie for a while, and then it got cut, and I was like, "Yeah, that probably makes sense." Peyton was totally right. Like it was coming in. It was like after Kang steals the core, Hank's ship crashes. He takes Janet away. Hope and Scott have been like beat up, and they're unconscious. Then there was a scene of me. Like Cassie and Modoc and you know, Cassie's being taken down the hallway by guards, and he's like, you know, oh, where's my dad? Well, I guess he's gone for good. He's like, take her away. And then the running joke is like the guards clearly don't respect Modoc, and they're just like, we are taking her. That's what we were doing. He's like, take her back. We don't work for you, man. And then like he blows me up with like a big head laser. But like it was funny. But
I actually kind of love that. That's
that with the online critiques of the Modoc arc, I see what they're saying, but like there were a couple of pops along the way to where like no one respects this guy. He's such a dick. like just giving him this like the simplest by intention character arc of like Darren Cross is just a huge dick the whole movie. And then suddenly he just like gets this like come to Jesus moment.
Okay. I was going to close on Modoc. Sorry, Robbie. I have to jump in. Now we have to just transition this. Okay. I wrote
I've got 2 more we can circle back to.
I wrote my 3 favorite Modoc lines down. I want you to just briefly tell me if there's a funny insight behind the line.
Sure.
Did you come up with it? Was it improv? Anything you got? Okay. The first line that's unbelievable is, "I became the ultimate weapon." And Scott goes, that's what this is?
Yeah.
Anything there? I love that so much.
That's probably like one of the first scene I wrote for him, and that's like the core of the character. It's like this insecurity and like dude, like I'm like, you got bad luck. Like there was more because like if you think about it, it's like, wow, this guy has missed a lot. He's been off the board since Ant-Man 1. There was this run of like I don't know if you guys are Simpsons fans, but there was an episode Homer's Enemy, where it's like that Frank Grimes guy who comes like a normal guy to work at the plant and is like driven insane by Homer and ends up killing himself. But like, there's this scene where he just sees how much like literally Homer has done in his life. He's like, "Wait, you've been to space? Like, you won a Grammy? Like, what? Like, why does this oaf have such a perfect life and I live between 2 bowling alleys? You know, there's like I want to give that energy to Modoc to where like, wait, hold on, you're an Avenger? Like, since when? And like, he's time traveled with Captain America twice. He knows Captain America. Oh, Hank respects me. Oh yeah, Hope and I are dating. What are you up to? Like, he has quite literally like everything Darren Cross could have dreamed of, and then Darren is just this huge head and trying to like make himself big. So like that, I'm the ultimate weapon. It just came from, I don't know, like I feel in X-Men movies they're always saying like we made the ultimate weapon. And they gave Wolverine good bones or something. But I just like the term ultimate weapon.
Well, I just gotta say this now. I think you answered this, but yes, the look at me, I'm such a dick really got me in the theater. And then the last one that I think Robbie and I's favorite line, maybe the hardest we laughed in the movie, was that Avenger part when he goes, "You were always like a brother to me," and they're all kind of like, "Wait, what?" And then he goes, "Well, at least I can die an Avenger." And then this is not the line though. Hold on. Then obviously it's hilarious when he's like, "Yeah, you're one. You're on the team. You're on the team." But this is the best line. He dies, and Scott goes, "Wow, a lot has happened today." That's the best line of the movie.
Hey, that and Rudd. I mean, I didn't even talk about Rudd.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
His delivery, like that guy is a comedy. Like I was gonna say savant, but he's old. But like he's really good. That guy's got like good instincts. No, that was again one of the first things because I thought like, let's really. I love like Zoidberg from Futurama. Have you ever seen that? Like he always rides the line of being pathetic and like you pity him, and he's so pathetic.
What a great reference.
And then he does something horrible or selfish or like Zoidberg, like and so I wanted Darren Cross to ride that line of like being so needy and so pathetic and so deluded too, and like to give him almost like a. Like Sean Bean in that first Lord of the Rings movie, like to give he thinks in his head like yes, like this is a worthy death. Goodbye, my friend.
Right? Yeah.
Man, like thank you, but
you didn't do much.
Like
Exactly.
Right. And clearly this guy's alone, and clearly this guy like really needs this, and so you see Scott and Hope be like,
yeah, you're in.
Yeah, man.
No, you're. Talking briefly, just a couple quick questions. When No Way Home came out, there was at some point it was revealed some of the final lines in the script that went along with that final Spider-Man scene where he's swinging, and I don't know if you saw this, but it was interesting for a lot of people to see what the screenwriters had written and then how it actually came out on screen and kind of what Peter was supposed to be feeling in that moment.
Peter Parker's gone, Spider-Man is forever, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was wondering, if you can recall / if you can divulge this information, what did the script say regarding the conclusion of Kang and Scott's final battle? Or, in other words, what are we supposed to, again, without trying to get anything that we're not supposed to know yet, what were we supposed to understand is happening there whenever Kang kind of disappears into the engine core?
Well, and I'm also curious about there's two lines you included, and again, you might not be able to answer this, okay, because of the Kang Dynasty stuff. But you included the two lines too, where Scott is terrified that if Kang gets out, is he afraid that everyone else in the multiverse is going to die besides the 616 universe if he gets out? And that's like He Who Remains kind of wrangling the timelines. But if he stays in, then the alternate versions of Kang are going to start the multiversal war. And maybe you can't answer that. But sorry, those are my Kang questions.
No, I mean, I think that, without spoiling too much, I think that's the devil's wager or like the devil's bargain. It's like that I thought would be a fun thing. And you didn't have a ton of time to explore it in the movie. But like you're down there trapped in hell, and suddenly, like, the darkest supervillain in the world comes up, and he's like, if you want to win, like, I'm the only guy that can beat you. Like, Kane is like a queen on a chessboard. Like, you can't beat a queen unless you're really good. It's like, I am the only guy who can even fight these guys. Like, if you want any shot, I don't care if you like me or not. Like, I'm the only guy who can beat these guys, if you want me on your side. And now that guy's gone, so it's like, like we might be in some trouble here.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how much I can say as far as it was, I mean, on an emotional level, it was Scott's arc coming through to where it's like he used to be that guy, and now he's a little bit in that Rocky 3 mode of his life. He's resting a little bit, he's coasting a little bit. His daughter is a little affected by that. He's no longer kind of that completely selfless hero. He wants to kind of, he deserves to have a normal life after all he's done. He deserves to be comfortable, and he deserves to kind of stop being the guy that has to fall on that grenade all the time. And then at the very end of that movie, he makes the choice of like, no, like even if it shuts me off from Cassie again, even if it blocks the way and all that, this is what a hero does. And he, slams that down. He does the same thing Janet did years ago to kind of, keep Kane out and sacrifice, himself. He does the selfless thing to kind of, which is always Kane's weakness, because he doesn't quite understand he doesn't understand selfless sacrifice, maybe because he doesn't really have anyone in his life, or he doesn't have anyone that he would do that for that's currently alive, or I don't know, that's more for later, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. Like I can't say too much about what happened to Kane the Conqueror there, but like he was hurled into the multiversal engine core. We've seen what happens to someone. Oh wait, no, sorry. Okay, tangent. There was more Bill Murray. Yeah. There was a scene where.
Oh.
That's for the extended cut. There was a scene. We see what happens to someone who falls into that storm without Pym particles. Like before you shrink down through the eye of the storm. It's like, what happens to a person who's thrown into like a multiverse blender, and they just get like. So there's an argument to where like, oh, that guy's dead. He's been split a billion ways and he's gone. Or did that cause more problems? Or is he much like Scott at the bottom of that thing, and there's multiplicity bursting out of him? Like I left it intentionally a little vague. I don't know if I have an answer yet or that I can divulge, but
sure.
But yeah, he's off the board for now. He's off the board. And now the problem is like, oh, he's not a liar. Like what's gonna happen now?
When you were writing him, were you purposely picturing like the prototype version of Kang the Conqueror? Like, I know there's all these variants, but is that what you were picturing in your head?
In the beginning, and this is, I credit Peyton and certainly when Jonathan came on board, I think the first draft I had was a little bit more of like a loser Kane. It was like an off variant that got stuck down here, and it was a more comedic version of the character. But then once He Who Remains came out, once Loki came out, I'm like, oh yeah, that's basically the same thing, or it's too close. So then the challenge became like, wait, no, like, yeah, let's do Kang the Conqueror. Like, let's do, like you said, yes, that to answer your question, like, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What if it actually is like the Kang? And it's like, oh, it's General Zod. It's General Zod. It's like, oh, he's been trapped in the Phantom Zone. Oh, it's Napoleon. It's like, oh, it's like you're meeting like a dictator, like a dangerous man in a bit of a low point, and like, oh, and have that sort of sense of dread of like, oh, this is not, you're not fighting Walton Goggins from the second movie.
Right.
It's like you are out of your league here, and like make it this like conqueror of men, and make him feel. That was like I loved writing. I don't know if it's hack or cliche, but like I'll use the term classical, I guess. But like I love a classical supervillain. I love a tortured kind of literary. Did you ever read like Wuthering Heights or like Heathcliff?
Yes. Yeah. Man, your references are batting 1,000 today.
But like I love that sort of like 1800s like just tortured man who's like lost his wife when she was in childbirth and like has never been the same, and like always windswept and stuff. Like Chris Claremont's Magneto from like the 70s and 80s X-Men comics does that really well. But like to give him a little bit of that, like I guess pageantry maybe is the word, but like a guy, if it is actual legitimately Kang the Conqueror, the real one, you can kind of give him that weight. And then a guy like Jonathan Majors, who is this classically trained Shakespearean actor from Yale drama, like he just embodies it. And like I've said this in other interviews, but like I was really nervous as like a comedy writer. I'm like, oh man, is this gonna work? Like what, you never know. And that first rehearsal is the scene where he walks up and says the like, "You're an Avenger, have I killed you before?" line. And he like sold it. And I was like, oh, I think this is going to work. It's like, you believe this guy. Like he can say a line that doesn't really make sense, but with clarity. And you're like, oh, that tells you everything about this character you need to know. Like Jonathan.
What a genius casting.
It winds up being such a perfect pairing. And I'm so grateful that we wound up with a version of Kang that does take himself so seriously, because it is such an insulting thing to a person like that to be fighting a hero like Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Like, and I love that some of that's made explicit, and some of that is even like in the way that, like in that final, maybe my favorite scene in the movie is the fist fight between Scott and Kang at the end. And there's this moment where Scott, I think, goes in for a punch, or maybe it's one of the ones that he lands. And Jonathan, he has this look where he kind of like, he looks up and this sort of like, it's almost an eye roll, but it's like he's like having to tell himself to be patient with just how ridiculous it is that he even has to deal with someone like that.
Or the line of, you talk to ants. Like, what am I doing?
That I'm so glad that I know exactly the look you're talking about. Like Scott gets a lucky shot in and he just does like, all right.
Yes.
That to me was, and Jonathan, this is so much a testament to his acting and like his character work. That was a big thing, and COVID was a part of it too. It's like, man, you feel trapped. And if you are like this time god who can go literally anywhere, do anything, and suddenly you get that stripped away by the first person you befriended in like hundreds of years, like you were betrayed because someone found out who you were. Like that's the dark, that's a deep wound of like, oh, they found out who I was and they protected me, and then they took away my gifts, basically. I thought to give, again, much like Napoleon or, even like Nelson Mandela in a way. He's not a supervillain. I don't want the
that's the clip.
Twitter
right,
people.
That's the headline.
We got the clip. Thank you.
Jeff compares, Kane the Conqueror to Nelson Mandela. But like that feeling of being imprisoned but still having kind of this crusade in your heart and knowing like this is, I can't, whatever his story will be in Kang Dynasty and all that. It's like this is a man who believes in what he has to do, and there's when she says like, who is Kang, he says, who I need to be. And there's this feeling of like destiny to this guy. Or like if you read that Jackson Lanzig series, there's those time loops that he's in that they did really well. What else? But just like the weariness and you can tell Kang's keeping like a lid on the whole movie. And so by the time by the time he finally like he sees like those rebels coming up the causeway, he's like, all right, the Ewoks are attacking. Like, okay,
right.
The Shrek 2 buddies are attacking. I'm gonna go deal with the gingerbread man down here.
All right, I'm gonna get you out on these last two things real quick. First of all, one of our listeners photoshops me into all different things, and he knows I'm such a fan of this movie. You need to see this, okay? So direct your attention to the screen for a second here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good is this Photoshop job of me as Modoc? That's the first thing. Second thing, was there a moment when you finally got to go sit down in a theater with fans that really resonate with you? Like, oh, that was fun to hear them laugh at that joke, or that was fun to resonate with that part.
The Modoc death especially was such a it's a dark joke. I guess I'll stick up for it a little bit. Like that's a dark joke. It's like the guy is putting his heart out and they're lying to him and he dies a loser. Like, I think that has like some dark humor to it, and it was hard to get it all the way through. And I'm so happy that like and even if it divides people, clearly, there's some things didn't land well with people or whatever, but like I in my heart, I'm like, that is maybe my favorite thing I've ever written in my life. And I'm glad, I'm so happy I got to do that, like Sean Bean Boromir death for a guy who doesn't deserve it.
Right.
That to me, like to hear the rhythms of the laughs in the theater, like I love that joke or that scene because it like has the funny thing, Paul Rudd's reaction, and then he doubles down.
Yeah.
There was a draft where he triples down, but it was probably too much.
If it makes you feel better, if that's one that you were nervous about, I've wound up seeing it a few times now, and that is one that every theater I've been in, people responded to every punchline in that scene. Like that one,
that's cool.
Certainly seems to have worked for the vast majority of folks.
That's really nice. And then, I used to always think this was a cop-out or a trite thing. You'd hear interviewers or directors talk about like their family or like how nice it was to make it with the people. But man, it turns out those anecdotes are true. Like I think back on like actually making it and like hanging out with Catherine Newton or getting to know Jonathan or hearing Rudd, like getting Rudd, like he's going to make your joke 3 times better with his instincts. Like, wow, like seeing Peyton direct, like the actual like meat and potatoes of making the movie was like just a thrill and a joy. And then I used to make little movies. I'm from middle of nowhere, like 200 people maybe in my town. My brother and I grew up making little movies together all the time with our neighbors and like, you know, all the kids in our town. And like, you know, there's family issues. There's, you know, there's stuff. There's a little Janet Van Dyne situation going on with everyone. But like, I was able to kind of invite my brother out to the premiere, and
wow,
and I got to like watch it with my family. Like my mom and dad used to help us out with those too. You know, they'd drive us around or have little props or play like they'd play a James Bond villain. You know, so like and they had not been out there in a while, and they hadn't really seen a lot of my work in that way, or they hadn't, you know, engaged with it that much. And so to actually sit down and like watch a big fun adventure movie that we would have probably watched if I was a teenager, you know, like I called it like an after church movie. Like I'm not so much, my family is quite religious and like, you know, not so much on my end, but there was that feeling of like, all right, it's Sunday, church is over, let's go have some lunch, and you know, let's go see a movie. You almost don't care what movie it is, you know, like you roll in,
right.
It's like a fun action adventure comedy, or you go watch Hitch, you know, it's like, yeah, I'll go. Like to have that feeling of watching that movie and seeing my brother, it's like, oh yeah, I wrote like a goofy, fun adventure action movie. It's like, that's exactly the type of movie like I think my brother would like. And to see him like engage with it in that way was a huge, like, that was like a surreal experience. And so like all the other stuff, clearly it's like, oh yeah, some surprises along the way. But to have that actual moment with my family, I now understand what like all those actors and directors talk about when they're like, oh yeah, it's about the process.
We went to the Thor Love and Thunder world premiere, and that was one of the things that stuck out to us the most, was that when you're in that theater, it's so much, you know, family, friends, crew, and like it was so cool. The energy is palpable because it's these people's life work for years.
Yeah, it's like I mean, every little thing about these movies adds up. It's so cool to see, like, the makeup people, the costume designers, the production designers, the visual, obviously the amazing visual artists. Like, these things are huge enterprises. And like, I got to meet this old British guy who worked on Lawrence of Arabia. Like,
oh wow,
he was more of like an honorary guy who was coming through. He wasn't like working all day on the set, but like,
sure.
But like, even is what,
still
90s, 80s. So I was talking to him with like Kubrick. Like, I talked to him about like Kubrick movies and David Lean and like, just
oh man,
that is a cool feeling of like you're working with a lot of people who also like want to be there or maybe not, but also like. It feels like, oh yeah, we're all from somewhere else and we're all kind of coming together to make something fun. There's like there's an electricity to making a movie, and I hope I get to do more of that because it's really cool.
Well, Jeff, thanks for being so generous with your time. We're massive fans. This has been an honor for us to have you on, and we went way longer than we said. So
no, guys, and I mean it. Like I honestly, you guys have good like broadcast voices too. Keep doing this. You guys are pretty good.
Oh wow.
But also, I am not kidding you. Like, it really turned me around and really cheered me up when I saw like.
That makes me so happy.
Because like I thought I was crazy too. I'm like, oh man, have I lost it? Did I just like did I hit the wrong moment? And you know, there's plenty of stuff to get into and things I can always improve on as a writer. But when I saw you guys talking about it, it made me feel so good because I'm like, yes, like they got the rhythms, they got the vibe I was going for, like they got the jokes and the style. So like it really meant it was one of the like actually like best moments I've had as like a writer to see that kind of. Wow. Let's call it communion with an audience. So like, that was really cool. So thank you guys.
Wow. We can't top that. I think we just go right there.
No, thank you.
I think you guys have a good like critical eye and a good like energy with how you talk about films. So yeah, keep doing it. It's cool.
Wow.
Man.
Oh my gosh.
Well, yeah, thank
Who
you
would've
so
thought?
much.
But yes, more of these, more. You do need to work.
Yes,
you need to work on your thumbnail game.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need more like little circles with really zoomed in images on them right next to our face.
Really bad goatees that show you you're ready to go alt-right at any moment. You're ready, like you're just a breakup away from going alt-right YouTube.
Just one stray Facebook link.
Yeah, I need you guys to be Andrew Tate bros.
Thanks for saying that. Just send us the invoice and we'll get
Yeah, of course. Yeah.